Action.
Cinemas, magical buildings that allow us to immerse ourselves into countless curious worlds, to fully experience lives which we may never get the chance to live, and sometimes understand our own lives just that little bit more. But for so many of us, the cinema is more than a building. It's a place that molds us, inspires us, and maybe even changed us when we least expected. And we've missed them so much. But now the cinema is back. So come with me now as I, Perry J. O'Halloran, take you inside some of this country's greatest independent cinemas to explore their stories, their secrets, and more than just a few of our favourite things. But if you think you've missed the cinema, just wait till you see how much the cinema has missed you. If you recognise this character, you'll know we're in Catford, birthplace to the legendary silent film studio of the 20s. Today is home to a new rising star in the business. So it's quite a unique cinema when you first walk in, because the first thing I noticed, there's a lot of space here.
Yeah, I mean, it's massive. I think it's one of the things that we get all the time is when people first come into the venue, they don't expect it to be quite as big as it is. When they walk in, you can just sort of see that the venue just keeps going and going, whereas ordinarily you'd probably think it was just sort of like a normal shop size. Similarly, we've got our food hall, which sort of stretches down. It's made up of local food vendors that sort of came in. A lot of them got their start on Catford Food Market, which usually happens once a month around here. So really, I mean, it's probably worth mentioning at this point, the venue is a bit of everything, which I think is probably part of the charm of it. And then, yeah, after you've gone through the cafe, the food hall, you then get to sort of our bar, cinema foyer area, I guess.
So we're not even standing in the foyer yet?
No, we haven't even reached the foyer yet.
Well, let's go and take a look at the foyer.
Sure.
With all of these tasty treats before we're even through the front door, it's a positive sign of things to come inside the Catford Mews cinema. So this is officially the bar/foyer area of Catford Mews.
Yeah, so this is where everything else happens in the venue. So it's really a mix of things that we've held in here and that we can do. One of the really nice things is that all of the furniture is removable. We've had huge events in here, we've done exhibitions before, presentations and classes and workshops and everything in between.
So this is a pretty big space to hold things like workshops. What kind of classes and workshops do you do?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we started with was sort of like a kids dance class, which was happening every other week, which is really nice. And we've done sort of craft workshops after some of the children's screenings over the weekend as well. So it's a really flexible space that we found we can do a lot with.
Pub nights as well. This looks like a pretty decent space for a big party.
Yeah. I mean, it was massive. The opening night, I think, was the biggest one that we've had. Probably about 350 people in here, going straight down through the foyer.
Wow, and I notice over this side, we've also got the story of Catford Mews.
Yeah, obviously the heritage of the building and the heritage of where it's come from is a big part of it. So what we like to do is sort of immortalise that in pictures going back. So we've got pictures from Preston, the founder of the business, walking around what was the former Poundland just before we moved in. And then we've got pictures of when it was sort of the Indo market and the original Catford Mews as well. So we like to make our guests sort of aware of that fact when they're coming in on each visit.
I would be amiss if I also didn't mention that behind me is a pretty amazing looking bar.
Yeah, so that is our sort of pride and joy. As you can see, quite visually striking as well. One of the things that we try to make the most of is stocking local brewers. So we work quite closely with Broccoli Brewery, as well as sort of bringing in local spirits and things like that.
Yeah, we've got one called Catty Colada, which obviously comes from Catford. So
Okay.
We've mixed it up. Instead of doing the Malibu normal, but the original, we do a Malibu passion fruit. So we've mixed it up with like a little bit of urban ingredients. Loads of people within the area, they do love craft beers, and it's actually nice to have a place that does quite a few different types. Every like film that comes out, we'll make a special cocktail towards it. So we did one for the Joker. and we also get the staff involved and customers involved to say like, what do you guys like? What do you want? What can we bring out? What's new? Do you know what I'm saying? So there's always a range and always a mix up of things. For the community, for children and everything, we used to have a cinema back in the day. That got closed down. So it was amazing when this cinema come in, because before the Mews used to be a marketplace. It used to have like a diverse area, like there used to be a record shop here, loads of different market stalls for the local community, and then that closed down. It then turned into like a Poundland, and after that, that closed down for a little while as well. And we were missing things in the area like cinemas and things for children and families. And it was amazing. It was just good to have this back again. It's been a great seller for the whole community to come in, all different types of people. Like you can literally sit down and do your work here. You can come in with your children. You can have like a really quiet space if you want, like a lounge space if you want. And it's just brought more people together. You've got people from the market that come in. You've got people from like the local council and Tesco's, and like everyone from the area comes in. So it's actually lovely. We've got neighbours, do you know what I'm saying, that come and join in. There's always something going on. If it's comedy, if it's even meeting like a local famous person, like we've had famous gigs here as well. Like loads of people have come down to support the actual gigs that we have.
You can walk in and then you can crawl out again after you've sampled the bar, yeah? Sounds good. Sounds good to me.
Definitely come to the Catford Mews. Like it's the hub of Catford. I would say that it's one of the quirkiest places in Catford at the moment, and people actually love it. When they come in, there's always a smile on people's faces, and I'm actually happy and proud to work here. So I think if the first place you should come to if you get off from Catford Station is this cinema.
Well, it looks like you've got a lot of drink back here. You're probably going to need a hand getting rid of some of it, so I'm just going to jump back if you don't mind.
Come round.
It's best that you don't encourage me. I am a lightweight, but I am a bit thirsty for a projection room. Well, you know what I mean.
So yeah, this is where you'll find sort of our projection room, I guess.
This is the projection room.
Yeah, projection room is probably a bit of a loose term, but as you can see, all of the screen's projectors sort of run along this corridor.
Wait, so this is where we would go into the screens, but the projectors are on the ceiling itself?
Yeah, so one of the things that audiences love to see the projection is something that they don't get to see very often. So what sort of works from a design point of view and architectural point of view actually was a really nice feature as well, where people walking down screen 3 or any of the screens can sort of see the projectors in action as they walk down it.
You really can as well. You can actually see the light from the projector going into the screen itself. I've never seen this anywhere. That's amazing. Well, then I guess the only thing left for us to do is to see inside the main auditorium itself.
Yeah, of course. You can pop in now.
Great.
With 3 screens and an eclectic programme,
Thank you.
I'm starting to see why Catford Mews is so beloved in the local community.
Oh, look at this. I love the colour scheme in here. Is the blue significant of anything in particular?
We just love blue. We just love blue.
Yeah. And why not?
This is screen 1, our main auditorium. So we've got about 85 seats in here. And so if we're doing any sort of Q&As or any panels, this is probably where they're going to happen.
Okay, but you don't just have the one screen here. You have a couple more, is that right?
Yeah, we've got 3 screens in total. So we've got screens 2 and 3, which are basically around the same size, probably about 60 seats.
They look like very futuristic and very comfortable seats.
Another cinema was getting rid of them after only 2 years. They were sort of redoing the whole lot. So we got wind of it just prior to us opening, and we were like, absolutely, we'll have them in.
Incredible. So this that we're seeing projected in here, that's coming from the projector that's in the corridor outside?
Yeah, so the very same that you saw in the corridor, just straight through a porthole, straight onto the screen.
Now, it's kind of hard not to notice that this is a pretty big screen. It's almost floor to ceiling.
Yeah, it's really one of our pride and joys of the fact that screen to sort of size of the auditorium, it's really what on the sort of larger side. So it's one of those things that is really going to take your whole field of vision, I guess.
So for a big action film or for something a little bit more personal and intimate, it's
amazing. You really feel like you're part of the action.
How about we get to know Nick and his own cultural film education?
And what would you say it was about the Walter Matthau, Christopher Lloyd classic, Dennis the Menace, that really gave you? I
don't know.
love films.
It was a really weird one. I think it was like my parents were just sort of testing out taking me to the cinema. So they were like, I think the first one that I went, Dennis Menace hated it, cried all the way through, and then they took me to Jurassic Park, which you'd think I'd probably be about 4 at the time. They were like, okay, we'll see how it goes. Loved it. Didn't have to peep all the way through.
But Jurassic Park is also a big one for a lot of people, I think. That's, I mean, whether they saw it on home video or at the cinema, Jurassic Park is where a lot of people really fell in love with the magic of movies, and they wanted to be filmmakers, and I think that prompted a lot of young filmmakers.
Yeah, massively. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of the film when I sort of understand it a bit more, but one of the scenes that they bring up all the time is where Sam Neill and Laura Dern sort of get up after seeing the dinosaurs for the first time, and it's such an amazing moment, definitely because, with the advent of computer graphics, I guess, getting into their own at that stage, it was just sort of like, people were just sort of seeing it. It's so like indicative of like cinema as a whole, just sort of seeing that and seeing the wonder on their faces. Probably a big moment for people.
What is that magic, do you think?
So I think it's a mix of things. So one, it's a social experience. I think it's that shared sort of experience that you get where you're in a room with people experiencing the same thing at the same time, which in our day-to-day lives is sort of going a bit more out the window and isn't happening as much. Escapism, I think, is the easiest way to put it. Like, everyone's on their phone all the time, they're having to work constantly. So for those 2 hours where you definitely shouldn't be on your phone in the cinema, there's nothing around you and you can just sort of get lost, I guess, in the stories that are taking place in front of you.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because for some people, going to the cinema or watching a film, it's very much something they'll do at the weekend or purely to socialise with friends. But for some other people, it's a real ritualistic experience. What do you think it is about going to the cinema that some people it really resonates with them?
Well, as you say, there are so many different levels about, I think, the experience of going to the cinema. And on one side, it is an experience of entertainment, like pure entertainment. On the other side, there's definitely a very important communal aspect to going to the cinema and being part of a crowd that reacts to what's on screen. Being in the same room with a crowd of people all looking at something on a screen and all having an instant reaction that they can share. Size matters, so like seeing things on a screen that is bigger than your face probably has quite a lot. Yeah, has quite a lot to do with the theatrical and like visual experience. I love comedy, and I think that comedy works really well in that sense of being experienced as a communal experience. So that's definitely something that you will take into account when programming, as well as films that are visually spectacular also work really well on a big screen. So yeah, that's definitely something to take into account.
It's obviously a cinema that's incredibly connected to its local community. What kind of things is Catford Mews doing as part of working with the local community, and what things does it plan to do in the future?
So I think, engagement with the community has been vital since before we even opened as the business. There was so much outreach to sort of see what the community was looking for from this space. There was a lot of input beforehand that they'd like to see the cinema screens, they'd like to see the sort of food stalls that we ended up in. One of the big ones is like an event space as well, where they can hold events with local creatives and sort of art groups as well. So having that from the beginning was really valuable. They can come in, they can share their ideas with us, and we can sort of then figure out how to sort of make it happen. Because ultimately, this is what the space is for. It's for the community around us to use. We just then need to figure out how it's going to work.
So a lot of it is about community outreach and trying to reach out to different parts of the community to ensure that they know that we are here, what we do, what we can do for them, and also just the fact that they can approach us and collaborate with us to a certain extent to create the program as well. I think it is a really welcoming space for some reason, and it appears to be very welcoming. It kind of gets you curious about what's going on in the rest of the venue, because obviously in different points of the space there are different things happening, different activities. So there's quite a lot to see, and the more you walk on, the more you want to see what's coming next.
What I like is that the frontage, you can walk past it quite easily. It's just sort of got this normal shop front, which is great. And then you then walk into the venue and it just sort of opens up into this huge world behind there. So you've got like the food vendors, like you sort of mentioned, this beautiful bar. And then you go into the screens and it just sort of opens up. I remember walking through and thinking, this is actually something quite special.
It's something special. I want to be part of this. Let me in.
Yeah, I think that was actually my conversation a bit later in the day. I was like, you have to get me a job. I was like, this is going to happen. And then, yeah, along the line, I think it was about 6 months later, here I was.
A lot of people, I feel like a lot of people will just walk in to have a look around, which is nice. A great thing about Catford Mews is that some people will come in maybe to get some food and then stay for a film, or the other way around. Some people will come in because they know that there is a cinema that is showing a certain film, and then they will stay for the food because we have amazing food, or will just stay for a drink. Being such a new cinema, a lot of people might not know what was in this building before being a cinema. So Catford Mews used to be a Poundland before being a cinema. And before being a Poundland, it used to be an indoor market. So I think what's really special about Catford Mews is that it does have a history. Although not being a cinema, I think what is really interesting is that it's not always been a cinema, but it did have this kind of communal aspect before becoming a cinema, and people will walk in and have a look around, and then they will approach us to ask us about what is this venue now, what do you do? And they will tell us that maybe, you know, years before they used to run a stall in the market.
Really?
And and I think it's just so nice that they want to share their stories with us.
The seat numbers that you have on, I actually hand painted them myself because they weren't in sort of the numbered order when they were installed. So
You did all of these seat numbers yourself?
Yeah. It was a very laborious 2 days of spray painting them and then marking them individually with the paint. But I suppose that's probably quite a good secret for the place.
Amazing. So Catford Mews inherited great comfy seats, by the way, very, very comfortable. And even the seats themselves have stories.
Yeah.
They've got history. I noticed that there's a pretty unique ceiling above us. What's the story with the ceiling?
We don't like to sort of hide where the venues sort of come from, that it's got sort of this industrial chic to it, which, you know, the wider centre has as well. So we loved it in the end, and we think it sort of really works. It's got a lovely aesthetic, and it actually works quite well sound-wise as well. It's one of these things that maybe not by design, but just by sort of seeing it and seeing that it works in the space, we were just like, just leave it in, just leave it how it is.
It's definitely one of the coolest looking screens I think you might ever sit in to watch a film. It's industrial meets futuristic.
Yeah, that just sums us up.
So what do you think the future is for Catford Mews as well as cinemas overall?
For Catford Mews, I think the future can only be exciting because, you know, being such a new venue, there's still a lot more that we can do and that we have to do, both in terms of films that we can screen, but also in terms of events that we can make and collaborations that we can create with people locally who have talent in terms of filmmaking, but also musicians and a lot more. So I think it's really exciting just in terms of the potential that Catford Mews has.
Independent cinemas are so fantastic because they all have such a unique identity. They're not sort of this cookie-cutter experience where you're going to go to the same thing in different places. What I love about independent cinemas is that they have this unique personality which you only discover by going from what they offer in their bars or concessions or snacks, to the staff that work there will have their own sort of stories about it, to even like the design as well from like their own auditoriums. Some of them, you know, 100 years old now.
People have missed the cinema a lot. So as we reopen, you know, it will be a good occasion to remind people of just how important it is to have these opportunities to share arts and culture and just how enriching that can be.
Get yourself along to Catford Mews. Go on, you know you're curious.